Hey, Travis, what payroll company do you recommend I use? I have gotten that question an unusual amount of times in the past couple months. Hey, let's just dive into this. Payroll is something that is very important, but super boring, right? It's not something that is that exciting, but it can have a huge impact on your life as a business owner. So this is for practice owners trying to pick what payroll software you should use. I am part of an accounting community, and there's this guy, like my idol. He'll never watch this, so I can say whatever I want about him. But he recently distilled all the feedback he gets from all the accountants in our community and just out there. He has I think he's like 50,000 followers. They're all accountants, right? So he gets a lot of feedback on lots of things, tech solutions for accountants, all this stuff. And he talked recently about payroll. And his perspective basically represents the greater accounting community. And accountants have a lot of opinions about payroll. We are the ones who see the horror stories. When stuff goes wrong with your payroll company, who do you go to? Like, the payroll company's messing up, and so you get frustrated with them. So the next person in line is really your accountant. And so as an accountant, we deal with a lot of payroll issues, and we have a lot of opinions about payroll companies. So today we're going to talk about payroll companies and what payroll companies I am recommending to my clients and why. And really just know there is no payroll company out there that is perfect. Payroll is a very difficult thing to be perfect at. Think about, even if you had 5 employees and you pay them every 2 weeks, the amount of details and transactions every 2 weeks it's happening. How many hours do they work? What's their pay rate? Where's the money going to? Do they have a garnishment, or do they have a 401k? Like, there's all these little things, millions of little things. It feels like certainly something is going to get missed. And, if you have a successful payroll that gets processed, you're never like, oh my gosh, payroll company, thank you so much. What great work you did. No one ever says that. The only time you talk to your payroll company is if they mess something up and you're like, what the heck did you do? You go fix this, right? So it's a difficult thing to be perfect at. But today we're going to get into who I'm recommending and why, and talk about a lot of other factors when it comes to payroll and what you should be thinking about when you go into hiring a payroll company. Let's get into it. All right. As I go through my recommendations of who you should use for payroll, I'm going to break this up into 4 categories of payroll companies. And within each of these categories, there's different companies that you could work with. The first category is your accounting firm. So this could either be if you're hiring somebody to file your taxes, or if you're hiring someone to keep your bookkeeping, or both. They may have a payroll solution. Now, that can mean a couple different things. It can mean that they actually have employees of that accounting firm that process payroll, or it means they have some kind of partnership with a payroll company. And that could be ADP, a very large payroll company, but they could have some kind of integration or partnership with your accounting. I typically like this option. I have an option like this at my firm. You don't have to use it, but I like it. I'm biased, but I like it because it reduces the amount of middlemen that you have to deal with. And if there's problems that come up, you just have one person you go to. There's a higher probability that the left hand knows what the right hand's doing. I won't say that that will always be the case, but it could simplify things for you. So that is a good option. So that could be a whole host of whoever your accountant is. What payroll solution do they have? Now, just know that you're going to get a wide range of options in this category, and some people might be better at, some accounting firms could be better at it than others. And also, you're going to get a wide range of technology. Like some platforms may be very antiquated and old. And so you just don't know what you're going to get in this bucket, but it could be good. So I would consider this as a valid option and explore that with your accounting firm. The second bucket is, this is another one that, I'm not going to name a specific company because there's lots of these out there, but they are small payroll companies. I'm not talking like, big national brands, but, like a small shop, somebody starts their own business as a payroll processor. They have a software that they use. They didn't build the software. They have a software that they use, and they're providing payroll services at a local, usually small level. Now, you can have really good companies, you could have really bad companies in this category. I don't think it's a terrible option, but you probably won't get the best technology. You probably won't get the best like expertise in certain things, but what you probably will get is a good relationship and more attention and TLC. You're going to matter a lot more to that person than you will to anyone at a big payroll processing company. So I'll throw that out there just as an option to explore. Some people do come across these. I have a client who had a patient who had a payroll company, and he's using that payroll solution, and the platform is not great. I don't get online access like I'd like to, and I don't love it as an accountant, but I think he's getting like pretty good service, and he has a good relationship with them. So it can be a good thing. You could probably get, pretty good rates at that level, but also some of the big national companies, can get really good rates too. So something to explore, but probably would not be at the top of my list. I think you usually get, they're a little bit more isolated, and they don't have as many features on other things. And we'll talk about kind of the main goal with all of this, but something you may want to explore. Small local company. So that's number 2. Number 4 is a large national payroll processor with their own platform, technology that they built. This is, the most popular category when we think of what payroll company you should use. You think ADP, Paychex, QuickBooks Online. We're talking, these big companies. In the accounting community, there were really 2 that stood out in this bucket that we've seen. And I'm going to say the names of these 2. Then this is who I would recommend you explore in this bucket. But even then, I'm not going to guarantee that it will be perfect on either of these. But the 2 solutions that by far stand out, in our opinion, in the accounting community, are Gusto and Rippling. Rippling's a newer one on the scene. And, in the accounting community, they were saying, Gusto's really good if you have less than 50 employees, which is really most, doctor practices. If you have more than 50, Rippling's a good option. But Rippling has a lot of features, so it can overwhelm you if you have fewer. I personally learned that Rippling, I haven't used Rippling a lot, but I've heard really good things about it. But I did recently learn they have annual contracts, which I don't know why that just bugs me so much, but Gusto does not. And Gusto's been around for a while now. I mean, they came on Fast and Furious, 7 years ago or so, and they've grown like crazy. And, it's a pretty good platform. The user interface is really good for the user. I can't stand the accountant reports, but that's not your problem if you're processing payroll. So, but those are the 2 that I would recommend in that category, Gusto and Rippling. Okay, the 4th category is going to be, well, actually, let me say one other thing about the third category, these large companies. So we're talking ADP, Paychex, all those guys, Oasis, Patriot, Sure Payroll. There's a ton. I'm not even scratching the surface. It's possible you could use ADP and it'd be just fine. Like, not everyone that uses ADP has a bad experience. Not everyone that uses Sure Payroll has a bad experience. So I'm not saying that you can't use those. And if you're currently using one of those solutions and you're like, well, am I missing out on something else? If your payroll's working and it's accomplishing what you need and it's fairly automated and it's not laborious on you as the owner and the staff seem to be okay with it, don't change. Like, like I would not change unless you absolutely have to for some reason if you're using one of these big ones. And sometimes it depends on what service person you get. You might get somebody at ADP that handles your account and they stay around for 10 years, and that works great. I will say, if you are shopping for these big ones, like specifically ADP, I know this from experience, if you are going to go with ADP, just know that the price that you get from ADP has a ton of negotiation wiggle room. I've seen people with extremely low rates at ADP. I've seen people with extremely high rates at ADP. ADP has the craziest range of pricing. So just know whatever price you have at ADP, you could probably get better. So if you're going to stay with ADP, maybe try to work on getting a better price. Another really big one in this category, I'll just mention before we go to the last category, is QuickBooks Online Payroll. So QuickBooks is owned by Intuit, and Intuit has had several payroll solutions over the years, and QuickBooks has, and QuickBooks Desktop. There's been all these different payroll. They've like bought payroll companies and rolled them all up into Intuit and QuickBooks. And really, they're pushing everyone to this QuickBooks Online platform. There's 3 tiers. I forget the names of the tiers, like Core, Elite, Premium. There we go. The accounting community uses QuickBooks a lot. And so, we're intrigued when QuickBooks has a payroll solution, and, wouldn't be opposed if it worked pretty well. But I can say with pretty high degree of confidence that most accountants would not recommend QuickBooks Payroll. Maybe if you have like 1 or 2 employees, but even then it's going to be kind of expensive. Like I don't know. It's just not the best solution out there. I don't know why I just have beef with QuickBooks Online Payroll. I wouldn't use it. Okay. 4th bucket is PEOs. Now, if you're not familiar with what a PEO is, it stands for a professional employer organization. This is kind of a confusing type of company. A PEO will process your payroll, but they will also do a whole lot of other things. They are intended to take things off of your plate that are HR related, benefits related, a lot of things that you can just hand over to them in theory, and they'll handle those things for you. I will say it's a lot more expensive than just a regular payroll company. Like a regular payroll company, you'll pay like $5 a month to process payroll for an employee. For a PEO, you'll pay like $80 a month for that employee to be on the platform. So significantly more expensive, but in theory, you get a lot more support. You also, one of the things I've been intrigued about PEOs is for small doctor practices when you have 5 employees, it's hard for you to go out and negotiate good health benefits for your staff. Blue Cross Blue Shield or Cigna or United, they don't care about you. You have 5 employees. They're not going to give you good rates. They're going to give you the worst rates they have. We're talking about, giving health insurance to your staff and offering that as a benefit. As a PEO, what they do is they take your dental practice with 5 employees and they combine you with 50 other dental practices with 5 employees. And before you know it, you have several hundred employees, And then they go to Cigna and they say, hey, what rates can you give me? And Cigna says, oh, you have 250 employees. Let's talk, and they give you better rates. And they pool it, really, they get closer to like thousands of employees. And they're going out and they're shopping and ideally getting better benefits for your people. And so there's this cost benefit analysis of, yes, I'm paying $80 a month to this PEO, but the benefits I'm getting and the things I outsource, it could be worth it. So that's the idea of what a PEO solves for you. The challenge I've had with PEOs is, if you have issues that come up, you're very much at the mercy of your PEO. You cannot go to the IRS. And if you have payroll tax issues or, issues with anything payroll related in the IRS, you can't go to the IRS directly anymore. You can't solve your problems. You have to go through the PEO because it's not your company that's filing the taxes. It's the PEO's companies that's filing on them for your employees with a bunch of others. So, your employees won't get a W-2 from, Travis Slade DDS Inc. They're going to get a W-2 from the PEO at the end of the year. So it's a little bit funky and you lose some control. And so there have been horror stories with PEOs. Employee retention credit, which came up during COVID. If you had a PEO and you were trying to get your employee retention credit, good luck, right? Like there are just some things that really sucked about PEOs. But if you are going to go down this road, there's two that stand out. Justworks is one, and Rippling. So back to Rippling. Rippling has a PEO solution that I've heard very good things about, and Justworks is another one. There's a lot of PEOs out there. Insperity, I think, is a really big one. There's some big PEOs out there. But I would try to go in with your eyes wide open on these, but I would start with those two, Justworks and Rippling. So those are the four categories I would look at if I'm looking at a payroll solution. But the real goal of what you're trying to accomplish, I kind of mentioned this earlier, is you want to automate your payroll as much as possible. You don't want this to be a pain point. You want it to work for your people, your staff. You want it to be good for them, but you want it to be as least manual and cumbersome to you as possible. And so, that solution can be in a lot of different places. A couple other considerations that you may want to take into account when you're thinking about payroll. A lot of times when people think of payroll, they naturally bleed into HR, human resources. And, your payroll company will need to know how many sick days they need to accrue for your staff. And you might not know the answer. Well, what should I do? Well, that's an HR question, not a payroll question, right? And sometimes the payroll companies can be nice and they'll say, well, in California, you gotta get 3 sick days a year or something, Technically, they're giving HR advice. And, you might think, well, they should know those things. It's their job. They could get in trouble. It's like legal advice, right? They could get in trouble if they give bad advice. So the payroll processing companies, it's really not their job to be giving you advice. They just need to make sure that whatever the policy is, whatever's in your handbook, they need to report that properly. But honestly, most people don't know, what should I have a handbook? Do I even have a handbook? There's all this overlap when it comes to payroll and HR. And HR is a whole other can of worms on issues that you can have. And so there are some companies that are very HR focused for healthcare providers. So HR for Health is one. Cedar, CEDR, is another one, where they have HR solutions for doctors that own a business. And with those solutions, they are going to have a payroll integration company that they use for payroll, that kind of, the HR and the payroll kind of speak to each other, and you get a lot of support. You pay more money for that support, which they'll justify as worth it because it just takes one lawsuit from an employee. But that may be an angle that you do for your payroll, but you want to make sure it's good and it solves your other problems and it doesn't add too much of a burden to you. Ideally, that reduces a burden for you if you're leading with an HR solution. The other big one that can be a real pain in the butt is if you have a 401k plan. If you have a 401k plan for your office, very common for a doctor practice to do that. I am always recommending 401k plans to my clients, but then it depends on where you have the money of that 401k plan. Where is it being invested? Fidelity, Charles Schwab, Vanguard. And does the payroll processor you're using have the ability to send money to those accounts? So, for example, if you're processing payroll and someone is going to get paid $5,000 this pay period, and they say, I want $1,000 of my paycheck to go to my 401k. So when you're processing your payroll, there's $1,000 that needs to, it doesn't get sent to the IRS. It doesn't get sent to the employee. That $1,000 gets sent to Charles Schwab. And can your payroll software automatically do that? Like, you set it up, you tell the account number where it should go, but then when you hit process, it just does it. Or is it going to require you to do a manual transfer after you process payroll, every time you process payroll? That would get really annoying. It does get really annoying. Like, a lot of people are doing that, but you don't have to do that. You could just find the right payroll solution that integrates with your 401k custodian, so that money just gets sent automatically. So there's a lot of different variables to take into account. I don't think there is one solution that just everyone should use. It works from everyone. Really, you want to make sure it's smooth and it automates with all the things that you're doing. And again, as an accountant who's biased, I think you should, make sure your accountant gives you a blessing on your payroll solution. It will resolve more issues for you down the road. All right. Hopefully that was a little bit of help on as you navigate payroll. And now just go throw up after everything you heard, because that was, not the most exciting topic, but again, you'll deal with it. You just deal with it all the time. So you want to get it right. Okay. Thanks, everyone. And if you have a payroll solution I didn't mention, actually, I do want to say this. If you have a payroll solution that I didn't mention and you're curious about it, shoot me a message. Or if you have one that you really, really like, let me know. Like that, in the accounting community, we didn't cover every payroll software out there, right? There's a lot of other ones out there that you might like. Love to look at those and make sure people know about them. Okay. Thanks, everyone.